The long winter's end. The observatory dome atop the Galactic Coalition's last stronghold hummed with nervous energy. Admiral Krell's elongated fingers traced the three-dimensional star map as another system winked out of existence. The Admiral's scaled skin paled to a sickly blue-green as he watched his universe shrink before his eyes. Mira Sector has fallen, whispered his first officer, Commander Valix. Her 4 eyes blinked in asynchronous patterns, a sign of extreme distress among the Altarians. That's the third major population center this cycle, the Nexus Collective. Had consumed another 5 billion lives, not killed, consumed. Transformed into more of their mechanical horde, their consciousness forcibly integrated into the vast machine intelligence that had been expanding across the galaxy for the past 3 centuries. The Denibian defense grid lasted only 6 rotations, Krell noted grimly. Their shield technology was supposed to be impenetrable. The collective adapts, Valix replied, the simple phrase carrying the weight of their inevitable doom. Every defense we create, they absorb and improve upon. Every weapon we deploy becomes theirs. The more advanced the civilization, the more quickly they fall. In the corner of the observatory, Ambassador Talara of the Viridian Conclave meditated, silently. Her species communicated primarily through telepathy, but when she finally spoke aloud, her words carried the weight of a funeral dirge. 326 species have fallen. 17 remain. The oldest civilizations in the galaxy, gone. The collective grows stronger with each assimilation. Krell's tail twitched with barely contained frustration. There has to be a solution. Some weapon, some strategy we haven't tried. The Arcadians attempted to destroy their own sun rather than be assimilated, Talara reminded him. The collective simply absorbed the energy and used it to fuel their expansion. The quiet desperation in the room was interrupted by a young officer bursting through the doors, his exoskeleton clicking excitedly. Admiral, we've detected unusual activity in the Forbidden Zone. The room fell silent. The Forbidden Zone, a spherical region of space surrounding the Sol system, had been cordoned off for over 3 centuries. Automated defense platforms and gravitational mines made passage impossible. No signals came out, no explorers went in. What kind of activity? Krell demanded. Energy signatures, sir. Massive ones and ships. Thousands of them. Valix's lower set of eyes widened. The collective is attacking Earth? No, the young officer replied. The ships are coming out of the Forbidden Zone. A collective gasp rippled through the observatory. Humans, Talara whispered, the word carrying a mythic weight. They're still alive. Humanity had been a relatively new species to the galactic community when the Nexus Collective first appeared. For decades they had fought alongside the other civilizations, but then, mysteriously, they had sealed off their home system without explanation nearly 3 centuries ago. Most assumed they had either been secretly conquered or had fled to another galaxy entirely. Open a channel, Krell ordered. If they're emerging now, they must have a reason. The communications array crackled to life, and for several moments there was only static. Then a voice speaking perfect Coalition standard came through with startling clarity. This is Fleet Admiral Helena Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We are receiving your transmissions and have been monitoring the situation. The hibernation protocol has concluded. Earth is awakening. Krell exchanged bewildered glances with his officers. Hibernation protocol? Admiral Chen, we are facing extinction. The Nexus Collective has consumed most of the galaxy. If you have forces to spare, we need your assistance immediately. There was a pause, and then Admiral Chen's voice returned, carrying an edge of, was that amusement? Yes, Admiral Krell. That's precisely why we're here. We've been waiting for this moment. Waiting? Valix couldn't contain her outrage. Billions have died while you waited. 300 years ago, Chen continued calmly, our scientists determined that conventional warfare against the collective was futile. They adapted too quickly. Each battle made them stronger. We needed a different approach. On the tactical display, the number of ships emerging from the Sol system continued to increase. Their design was unlike anything Krell had ever seen. Smooth, almost organic curves that seemed to shimmer in and out of normal space. We couldn't beat the collective with our technology then, Chen explained. So we chose to evolve our technology while they weren't watching. Earth entered a controlled hibernation state. While most of humanity slept in stasis, our best minds worked in isolation, developing technologies the collective couldn't adapt to because they'd never encountered them. For 300 years? Talara asked incredulously. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to refuse to fight it on your enemy's terms, Chen replied. We've been monitoring everything, every battle, every adaptation, every assimilation. We studied how the collective thinks, how it adapts, and we built countermeasures they cannot predict. As if to punctuate her words, the tactical display lit up with new alerts. The nearest collective fleet, a massive armada that had been moving toward the coalition's stronghold, had altered course and was now accelerating toward the human fleet. They've detected us, Chen noted clinically. Good. This was always going to be the first test. Krell watched in horrified fascination as the collective fleet approached the human vessels. The collective had conquered entire civilizations with far less firepower than they were now bringing to bear. Admiral Chen, he began cautiously, perhaps we should coordinate our... His words died as the space between the two fleets distorted visibly. The human ships hadn't fired conventional weapons. Instead, they seemed to be manipulating the fabric of space-time itself. Collective vessels began to disappear, not exploding but simply ceasing to exist, as though they were being erased from reality. What are you doing to them? Valix whispered. Dimensional phasing, Chen replied matter-of-factly. The collective exists and adapts within conventional three-dimensional space. We're shifting their component atoms into adjacent dimensional planes, essentially taking them apart by moving different parts of their ships into different dimensions. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. The entire collective fleet, over 3,000 vessels, was gone, without a single human casualty. That's impossible, Krell muttered. The collective always adapts. They can't adapt to what they can't comprehend, Chen replied. And they can't assimilate technology they can't capture intact. This is just the beginning, Admiral. We have much more to share. As the human fleet approached the coalition stronghold, Talara's telepathic senses reached out tentatively toward the lead vessel. What she encountered there nearly overwhelmed her. They're different, she gasped. Their minds, they've evolved. They think in ways I cannot fully grasp. 300 years of focused technological and neural evolution will do that. Chen's voice carried a hint of pride. While our bodies slept, our minds were enhanced. We've become what we needed to be to end this threat. The observatory fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had been preparing to save it, taking the long view in a way no other species had considered. Why now? Krell finally asked. Why wake up at this particular moment? Critical mass, Chen replied. Our models predicted that once the collective reached a certain size, their adaptation rate would begin to slow as the energy required to maintain their network increased exponentially. They're at their most vulnerable right now, large enough to be a significant threat, but not so large that they can instantly recover from catastrophic losses. As the human fleet took up positions around the coalition stronghold, shuttles began to launch from the larger vessels, heading toward the station. Admiral Chen was coming aboard, and with her, humanity's return to the galactic stage. We have a lot to discuss, Chen transmitted. And not much time. The collective has already begun adapting to our first attack. They're learning, but this time, we're learning faster. In the docking bay, Krell and his senior staff waited nervously as the human shuttle landed. The door hissed open and Admiral Helena Chen stepped out. She was tall for a human, with close-cropped silver hair and piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything at once. Behind her came a diverse group of humans, each carrying equipment that defied easy categorization. Admiral Krell, Chen extended, her hand in the traditional human greeting. It's time we properly introduced ourselves. The real war begins now. As Krell tentatively extended his own scaled hand to meet hers, He couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these awakened humans had in store, and whether it would be enough to turn the tide against the seemingly unstoppable force that had nearly consumed the galaxy. The dawn of human ingenuity, the Coalition war room buzzed with an energy it hadn't known in decades, hope. Admiral Krell observed with fascination as the human delegation efficiently set up their equipment, transforming the outdated tactical systems with interfaces that seemed to respond to thought as much as touch. Our hibernation wasn't merely about survival, Admiral Chen explained as holographic displays came to life around them. It was a strategic decision to remove ourselves from the equation long enough to become an unknown variable again. Commander Valak studied the humans with open skepticism. You abandoned the galaxy for 3 centuries. We saved ourselves to save everyone else, corrected Dr. Elias Santos, the head of the human scientific contingent. A slender man with dark eyes that seemed to constantly calculate, he manipulated the central hologram to display the galaxy with glowing red areas representing collective-controlled space. Had we stayed and fought conventionally, we would have been assimilated within decades, and our knowledge would have only made the collective stronger. Talara, who had been silently observing the humans with her telepathic senses, finally spoke. They are telling the truth, but there is more they have not shared. Chen nodded respectfully to the Viridian. Your people's telepathic abilities are even more refined than our historical records suggested. Yes, there is more. She turned to the gathered coalition leaders. Humanity didn't merely hibernate, we evolved. With a gesture, she activated a neural interface at her temple, and the holographic display shifted to show human DNA alongside what appeared to be quantum computing structures. Project Prometheus, she explained. While 98% of humanity slept in stasis, the remaining 2%, our brightest minds, underwent controlled neural evolution. We merged our consciousness with quantum computing systems that could process information in ways organic brains never could. Generation after generation worked, each building upon the advances of their predecessors. You became machines? Krell asked, horrified at the parallel to the collective. No, Chen shook her head firmly. We remained human but enhanced. The key difference between us and the collective is choice. Every augmentation, every enhancement was consensual. We maintained our individuality, our creativity, our capacity for empathy. All the things the collective sacrifices for efficiency, Dr. Santos brought up another display. The collective functions through forced assimilation and a hive mind that subordinates individual consciousness. We took the opposite approach, enhancing individual potential and then connecting those minds through quantum entanglement networks that allow instant communication without loss of autonomy. And this is how you developed weapons they cannot adapt to? Valak asked. Not weapons, corrected Chen. Dimensional manipulation technology. The collective exists in conventional space-time. They can adapt to any weapon that operates within those constraints. But they cannot adapt to what fundamentally alters those constraints themselves. Before the conversation could continue, alarms blared throughout the station. The tactical display shifted to show a massive collective fleet approaching, far larger than the one the humans had defeated earlier. They've called reinforcements, Krell noted grimly. That's their largest concentration of forces I've ever seen. Chen seemed unsurprised. They're adapting faster than expected. Good. This will be informative. She activated her neural interface, again communicating silently with the human fleet. Within moments, the human vessels began to change formation. What's happening? Valak demanded. We're implementing Athena protocol, Chen replied calmly. Our first attack was predictable, a direct confrontation. Now we show them something different. On the display, the human ships began to emit unusual energy signatures, creating what appeared to be a web of interconnected fields between them. The collective adapts through observation and assimilation, explained Dr. Santos. They cannot adapt to what they cannot observe. We're creating a dimensional fold around their fleet, essentially removing a portion of space-time from their perception and access. The coalition leaders watched in awe as the massive collective fleet seemed to fragment, portions of it simply vanishing, as they encountered the dimensional boundaries the human ships were generating. "They're not being destroyed," Chen noted, "just redirected into parallel dimensional planes. From their perspective, large portions of their fleet are simply disappearing." The collective vessels that remained began firing at the human ships, but their energy weapons seemed to bend around their targets, missing entirely, or in some cases doubling back to strike their own vessels. "Gravitational lensing," Santos explained. "We're warping space-time around our ships to redirect their attacks." For 30 tense minutes, the battle unfolded unlike any the Coalition had ever witnessed. It wasn't a contest of firepower, but of reality manipulation. The collective, for the first time, seemed genuinely confused, its normally coordinated movements becoming erratic as its strategy continuously failed. Then, something changed. The remaining collective vessels suddenly adopted a new formation, and their energy signatures shifted. "They're adapting," Krell warned. "Faster than projected," Chen agreed, but showed no concern. "This is why we brought multiple strategies." She turned to her team. "Implement Hermes Protocol." The human ships suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, seemingly blinking in and out of existence as they moved. Where they appeared, collective ships vanished. "Temporal displacement," Santos explained. "We're briefly phasing our ships slightly out of sync with normal time, allowing us to move through space at apparent faster-than-light speeds within normal space. When we revert to normal temporal sync, inside a collective vessel, the space cannot be occupied by two objects simultaneously," Talara finished, understanding dawning. "You're using the fundamental laws of physics as a weapon." "Precisely," Chen nodded approvingly. The battle continued to shift, the collective adapting, the humans countering with yet another approach each time. What became clear was that while the collective was adapting, it was doing so reactively, while the humans had prepared centuries of strategies in advance. "Admiral," one of Chen's officers approached with urgency. "We've located it, the Nexus Core." The tactical display shifted to show a massive structure hidden within the debris field of a destroyed system. Unlike the uniform design of collective vessels, this structure was unique. A twisted, ever-changing crystalline formation that pulsed with energy. "The central intelligence," Chen explained to the Coalition leaders. "The original machine consciousness that began the collective. It's been hiding, directing the assimilation from safety, protected by layers of fleets and defenses." "You can reach it?" Krell asked, scarcely believing what he was hearing. "Better," Chen replied with the first real smile he had seen from her. "We can isolate it." The human fleet suddenly disengaged from the battle, regrouping into a new formation that surrounded the Coalition stronghold. "What are you doing?" Valix demanded. "The collective fleet is still out there." "Watch," Santos said simply. The human vessels began emitting energy in precise, synchronized bursts. The effect rippled outward, forming an expanding sphere of distorted space that engulfed first the station, then the nearby planetary systems. "Dimensional quarantine," Chen explained. "We're creating a bubble of altered space-time around this region, one the collective cannot penetrate. Their ships, their signals, their influence cannot cross this barrier." "You're cutting us off from the rest of the galaxy?" Krell asked, alarmed. "Temporarily," Chen assured him, "while a special task force handles the Nexus Core." On a secondary display, they watched as a small group of human ships, different in design from the others, sleeker and somehow more predatory, detached from the main fleet and vanished into what appeared to be a tear in space itself. "Dimensional shortcut," Santos explained. "A direct route to the core that bypasses normal space." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then abruptly, the tactical displays monitoring the collective fleet showed chaos. The perfectly coordinated movements of the machine ships dissolved into random, uncoordinated actions. Some vessels simply powered down while others began firing indiscriminately. "It's done," Chen announced. "The core has been isolated in its own permanent dimensional pocket, a prison outside normal spacetime. Without its guiding intelligence, the collective is fragmenting." "You didn't destroy it?" Talara asked, surprised. "We don't believe in genocide," Chen replied firmly. Even for a machine consciousness, it will exist in its own reality, unable to harm others, but still alive. As the implications of what had just occurred began to sink in, Krell found himself staring at the human, Admiral with new understanding. 300 years, he said quietly. You slept for 3 centuries, evolving, preparing, watching us die, all for this moment. Chen met his gaze steadily. We took the long view, Admiral. Sometimes the greatest victories require the greatest patience. The collective had one weakness. It couldn't conceive of a species deliberately removing itself from the game, only to return generations later with entirely different rules. In the days that followed, as the dimensional quarantine was gradually lifted, the Coalition witnessed the full extent of humanity's return. The fractured collective vessels were not destroyed but contained, studied, and in many cases, the consciousness of assimilated beings were extracted and restored to synthetic bodies. The recovery will take decades, Chen explained to the Coalition Council that had hastily assembled. Maybe centuries. But we've developed technologies to restore ecosystems, rebuild worlds, and more importantly, we've brought knowledge to share. Why help us? Valix asked the question that many were thinking. After we failed to stop the collective, after so many civilizations simply surrendered. Admiral Chen's expression softened for the first time. Because that's what humanity does. We fight impossible odds. We sleep for centuries if that's what it takes. And when we finally win, we rebuild. Together. As the council meeting concluded, Talara approached Chen privately. There is something you still haven't told them, the telepath observed. Something about why humanity truly went into hibernation. Chen studied the Viridian carefully. You saw it in my mind? Glimpses only. Enough to know there was another reason. Chen nodded slowly. The collective was not the only threat we foresaw. There are things moving in the dark spaces between galaxies, things that make the collective seem primitive by comparison. Our hibernation served 2 purposes. And now? Talara asked. Chen looked out at the stars, her enhanced eyes seeing patterns and possibilities invisible to others. Now we prepare for the next long game, but this time, we won't face it alone. As word spread throughout the surviving civilizations that the collective had been defeated, ships from distant hiding places began to emerge. Species thought long extinct reappeared from secret refuges. The galaxy, which had been shrinking for centuries, began to expand again with possibility. And at the center of it all were the humans who had done the impossible not through overwhelming force, but through the simple, radical strategy of patience. They had slept while the galaxy burned, not out of cowardice, but out of the determined belief that sometimes the only way to win was to play a game so long that your enemy forgot you were still a player. The long winter was over, and in its wake came a dawn that no one, not even the collective, could have predicted.